Welcome to the Beauty in Battle podcast, where we talk about winning in marriage by waging a war. I'm Jason Benham. I've got my girlfriend / wife, Tori Benham, with me, and we are here to talk to you about how Satan tries to get you to fight face to face with your spouse, but God designed you to fight shoulder to shoulder against Satan so that you can win in your marriage. Fighting together draws you together. We cannot wait to jump in. So here we go. So welcome back to the Beauty in Battle podcast. We are in our 8th installment of the Neuroscience of Connection, based on the book by Dr. Amen, You Happier. We have covered some serious stuff.
We have.
It's been really good. And we're answering the question that, Dr. Amen is, and we're talking about the stuff that he's found that can help couples connect closer and closer together. The question is, am I reinforcing the behaviors I like or dislike in my spouse? Mm-hmm. And specifically, we're using the acronym RELATING, R-E-A, no, I about misspelled it, R-E-L-A-T-I-N-G, responsibility, empathy, listening, assertiveness, time, inquiry, noticing, and grace.
That's right.
Today, we're parking on noticing, and what Dr. Amen means by that is you need to learn to notice what you like more than what you dislike.
Right. It sounds so simple, right?
Yeah.
Yet sometimes it can be so complex.
Yes, it is. But before we get going, we're not doing a song today. We're doing a little pivot.
We're kind of going back and forth with some songs and some jokes. Some of you guys really like the jokes.
Okay.
So we got a dad joke.
Okay.
I told a joke on a Zoom meeting and no one laughed. It turns out I'm not remotely funny.
Okay. There you go.
You laughed. I love it. We got Jason remotely to laugh, funny. Guys. This is a good day.
Yeah. It's got to be pretty good for me to laugh at.
Okay.
Where did you get that?
Dad jokes.
Oh, dad jokes. Okay, got it.
Why did the chicken go to the gym?
Why?
To work on his pecs.
Oh, okay. Get the pecs. Got to do some push-ups. I like
There's
that.
actually a T-shirt that's circulating with these farmer dudes wearing this shirt that says with a chicken lifting weights. It's really funny.
Working on the pecs.
Working on the pecs.
Okay, I like it. All right, well, I'm ready to dive into this. What do you got for us today?
Okay, so this is what Dr. Amen says about noticing what you like more than what you don't. When you have an unkind or critical thought, when you have unkind or critical thoughts, filter them through this question. This is so good. Does it fit?
Does it fit?
Does it fit?
Okay.
So process it and then ask yourself if it fits with the goals for your relationship.
Okay.
Does it get you what you want from the relationship?
So if that thought doesn't line up to give you what you want, then you got to lock that sucker up.
And this is something that we talk to so many couples about. You need to ask the question, what do you want? Okay. And we say this all the time, like, okay, so there's a conflict and there's this way of dealing with it. There's this behavior problem, right? And oftentimes we're working through these with couples and they're telling us this, like this conflict, and they're telling us, I don't like the way she responded. I don't like the way he responded, da, 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 da.
Yeah.
And what do you guys want?
Yeah, right. You always need to start there.
Right. Because I guarantee you, if you can explain to me what you want, your behavior is not getting you what you want. And so if you can actually explain what you want, then maybe you can pause long enough to change your thinking, which will change your behavior. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And I like the way, all the science stuff that people are learning now, basically what it's doing is science is catching up with the Bible, where Romans 12, of course, there's other places that tell us, but Romans 12, take every thought captive.
Right.
Like you take a thought captive means that the thought doesn't die.
Yeah.
It's alive. It means that it's just no longer in control.
Yes.
So you lock it up.
Exactly.
So if that negative thought doesn't get you what you want,
right, then
lock it up. So that's why Tori's saying what she said. You got to start with what do you want? Like, seriously, think about that.
Yeah.
Like, did you think about that today when you woke up? Like, what do I want out of life? And maybe in meditation you do, but if you really think about your key relationships, but specifically your marriage, what do you want with your marriage? It's like, well, I want to get along. I want to be in love with each other. I want to have that same romantic zeal we once had. You can get all that stuff back and you can have it. but it comes first with your vision. What do you want? And second with your thinking.
Right. And so the way that Dr. Amen says it, he says, assuming you want a kind, caring, loving, supportive, passionate relationship, pointing out your loved one's flaws and shortcomings does not help you achieve that. So it's recognizing that the things that you think about your spouse are either breathing life or destruction over your relationship. And he talks about positive reinforcement and the science behind positive reinforcement and the studies that they've done, that positive reinforcement is so helpful in any relationships.
Yeah.
And we've seen this a lot in our kids, right? Like if we're just constantly pointing out the bad, they feel defeated. It crushes them. It exasperates. What's that verse that talks about exasperating? Do not exasperate your children.
Because then you'll die, kind of thing.
Jason's version.
That came out of the Book of Mormon or the Quran. But I just remember Dr. John Gottman's 5-to-1 rule and the 20-to-1 rule.
Yep.
So think about your relationship. If you want to remain at equilibrium, which means you remain right where you are, you're not getting any worse and you're not getting any better in your relationship, then you need the 5-to-1 rule.
Yeah.
5-to-1 is 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative. Okay? But if you want your relationship to move forward and actually to grow and thrive, you need 20 positive interactions to every 1 negative. So it's the 20-to-1 rule. So what creates an interaction? It starts with a thought.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
It starts with a thought. It's your thinking about each other. So if you're catching each other doing what's right rather than what's wrong, that's going to help you guys get to that 20-to-1 rule, which will move your relationship further.
Yeah, exactly. He talks about practicing accurate thinking. It's not just positive thinking, it's accurate thinking.
Oh, I like the way he puts that.
Yeah. He said, if you want to feel good, then you have to think good, because thoughts create feelings. Feelings create your behavior, and then your behavior creates outcomes in relationships, works, finances, etc. And this is just so incredibly true that it begins with your thoughts. And we talk about this in the book, Beauty in the Battle.
Yeah.
About when you used to travel years ago. We had gotten into a relational rut, and it was because of some faulty thinking I had fallen into.
So basically what you're saying is our rut was your fault.
In that situation, maybe. You had something to do with it, though. That takes two.
That is true.
But this is really interesting. I'm also reading a book. It's called The Placebo Effect in the Brain.
That is a crazy book. Tori's sharing with me some of that stuff, and it is incredible.
It really is. It's actually called You Are the Placebo, and how our mind is the placebo. Like the way that we think actually, our brains are pharmacies, really.
Yeah.
And so the way that you think produces chemicals and hormones
that
and
heal you.
That actually are healing to you or destructive to you.
Yeah.
And so your way of thinking is actually the placebo.
Yeah, that's right. Placebo meaning if it might not be the real thing, but because you think it's the real thing, your body responds as if it's the real thing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It's really
like somebody feeling a little nauseous, and then you go give them a pill, and in that pill it could just be I don't know what they would put, like what could they put in a pill?
Sugar pill.
It could be like a sugar pill, and they're like, hey, this is a special pill that specifically takes away nausea, and you take it, and 10 minutes later you feel better. Why? Because your brain thinks that it's feeling better.
Yeah.
Because of what you took. That's where they get this whole placebo from.
Right. And as they do the studies,
power of your brain.
they're giving these patients the sugar, they're also monitoring what's happening in their body. They are producing hormones,
good chemicals.
So there's something that is in the medicine that now, even though you're not taking the medicine, is in it. They see it in your body. Your brain produces it. It's just crazy to me.
I've never heard anything like that, but it is amazing. But it does show you the power of your mind and why thinking is so incredibly important.
Accurate thinking is so important.
Especially
that's right.
Toward your spouse and toward your relationship.
Yeah. So one of the things that he talks about in this book, he says we're creatures of habit. We think somewhere between 60,000 to 70,000 thoughts in a day.
Wow.
And 90% of those thoughts are exactly the same ones we had the day before.
Yes. And all of those are in the subconscious. Almost all of those are in the subconscious.
Yes.
So you don't even know you're thinking them. That's where negativity can get you.
Exactly. Because you're on this perpetual loop. that you just, you were on it the day before and you were on it the day before and and now you're on it again it's just automatic.
Yeah.
And so if your thoughts are not producing the relationship that you want, then you have to stop that loop.
Yeah.
You have control. You have power. We have agency over our thoughts. The Bible is very clear on this.
Yeah.
We have agency over our thoughts. We can control our thinking, and we can actually change our thinking through the transformation of our minds. And so this is just so interesting to think that you have all these thoughts. 90% of them you thought the same the day before, right?
Yeah.
And so now we need to be intentional about those thoughts and what they're doing to our relationship. And this is what we talk about in one of the chapters of our book, that Jason was traveling and I was completely overwhelmed. And oftentimes we develop negative thinking in very stressful seasons of life, right? Because we're not thinking about what we're thinking about. We're thinking about surviving and making it to the next day.
And your mind left alone will naturally gravitate toward the negative. Mm-hmm. It's like when you cut open an apple.
Right.
What's going to happen to the apple? It's naturally going to get brown.
Right.
It's naturally going to start dying.
Yeah.
And it's going to die faster when you cut it open. It's the same way with negative thinking. Look, we're all dying.
Yeah.
We're all dying.
Right.
But when you throw negative thinking into it, you're dying faster.
Right.
You need to stop.
Exactly. And so when Jason was traveling and I was so stressed out, I began to think, I was kind of in survival mode and I was trying to survive you being gone and all, picking up the slack of being kind of like a single mom during those days that you were out of town.
I'm so sorry.
I began to build a wall to protect myself from being vulnerable. I felt super vulnerable. Like Jason is totally okay without me. He can survive, in all these different cities and states. And he seems to be thriving when he's not with me.
Yeah. And
when Jason's not here, I feel like I'm dying on the vine because I'm carrying all the weight of parenting and all these things. And I feel so weak and vulnerable. Yeah. And I knew that you couldn't stop traveling. This was a season of life where things were picking up and you were doing really well in the business, and it required you to travel, and it was providing for our family. And it wasn't something that it didn't make sense for you to stop traveling. It made sense to me that I need to figure this thing out. And so my way of coping with it in a very unhealthy way was to put a wall against you, because then I wouldn't feel so vulnerable. Then I wouldn't maybe hurt so much every time that you left. And I'm like, I got to get strong. I got to be able to do this without Jason, by myself. And as I did that, I began to go down this path of thinking that was, you don't need Jason. You're totally fine without him. You can do this without him. And when he comes home, it was like this weird transition of like, okay, now I got to let him in. Like I put up this wall that I could do this on my own to, okay, now I got to let him in. And then I push you away. And it was just, it really created a wedge in our relationship. And it wasn't long before we were suffering because of it. And I knew, I'm like, I don't know. He's like, why do you push me away every time? I just said but I mean you, because you're sitting right here.
Yeah. But I think it might've had something to do with the fact that when I would go eat at a nice restaurant, whenever I was traveling, I'd send you a picture of the steak and you weren't having steak.
No, I was having mac and cheese again.
You were craving Cece's pizza.
Cinnamon rolls.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah. And so what it did is it made me really pause and like, what is going on? Like what have I done in my thinking that is pushing me so far away? And at the same time, I was learning about the neuroscience and how our thoughts are like pathways, and that when you think a thought, it becomes a path of least resistance in your brain.
Right.
And so your thoughts are pathways in your brain. And this, goes hand in hand with what they're saying here, that 90% of the things that you think are the things you thought before, because you've created a lot of pathways that you just naturally go down because you already thought it before, you think it again. And so my way of thinking was, build a wall, keep Jason at a distance. Don't be vulnerable. Don't let him in. Push. You can do this on your own. You're okay without him. These were the thoughts. And as Caroline Leaf was explaining this, I think it was a podcast or something. This was 12 years ago. Yeah. I was like, oh my goodness, I have created a pathway in my mind that I am on a perpetual loop that is leading me away from Jason and not to Jason. Yeah. And I remember coming to you and like, I have really begun to think very negatively about you, and this isn't working for our relationship. I need to transform my thinking. Yeah. And that was like a journey that you jumped in with me, and we walked down together.
And you did. Are you going to give our 3-step that we give in the book? The 3 R's?
You go ahead and you give it.
Because I remember you walking through that, and I remember you reading about Caroline Leaf and how she basically explains that, those pathways will stay there until you proactively get off of that path and create a new path.
And the beautiful thing is that your mind is plastic and it can be rerouted. It takes intention and it takes time of starting a new way of thinking and going down. Every time you're triggered to the foot of that path that you typically go down, you switch, pivot.
And then the old one gets overgrown.
Exactly.
So then you don't think like that anymore.
Right.
And then you become a brand new person. And so Tori and I give the 3 steps. I'll start with the letter R: recognize, renounce, replace, where you got to recognize, there's that old negative thought again. I've got to renounce the lie behind it. And then I have to replace it with the truth. We derive that from Romans 12. 1 and 2, where it talks about don't be conformed to the pattern of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Renewal is to take off the old and put on the new. You got to take off the old thought and you have to put on the new. Like Tori with her fingernail polish, she has to first remove the old, then she can put on the new. That's targeting the lie behind the thought with the truth of the new thought.
Right.
And so that's where taking thoughts captive comes in. So Tori, if I was on the road, and this happened a couple years ago where I was on the road again, and that'd be the name of a great song, right? On the Road Again. I just can't wait to get back on the roadie. Actually, I don't want to get back on the road, Tori. Okay.
Yeah, don't get back on the road.
Okay.
Again.
But anyway, so she had totally won this battle and was thinking completely different. And then I went off on a trip. I forget where I went. I think it was Tampa, Florida, or someplace like that. And I called her and I could tell she was thinking like she used to, where she wasn't feeling connected to me. There was a bunch of people in the background. It made her feel disconnected and like she wasn't a part of what I was doing. And I could tell she was thinking the way that she used to think. Now, pause.
Because there will be triggers.
Yeah. So quick pause. Okay, spouses. When your spouse is working through something, it's best for you not to remind them that they're acting like the old person. Or acting like, you're acting just like your mother or like your father or whatever. The best is don't say anything. Just let them process through it. And I can remember starting to defend myself, but that wasn't helping me at all, and then I just realized, why don't I just stop doing that? And then Tori just worked through it on her own. Next morning she calls and she says, throughout the night, I realized that I was thinking like I used to. And I made a decision that I was not going to do that. I reminded myself of the truth, so she was renouncing the lie behind the fact that, hey, Jason's on the road and he doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about the kids. He only wants this thing without you. That was a lie, replacing with the truth. His heart is really with me, and God forbid, even if my heart wasn't with you, the spouse can still say, you know what, but God is with me. Like God is a good father. He can turn my husband or my wife, their thinking around so that their heart is with me. And so you're recognizing, you're renouncing, and you're replacing. And now, even when because now I'm traveling with the Life Surge circuit and I'm having to do all this speaking a lot. And so I'm traveling a lot. And every now and then Tori can still feel triggered, but she doesn't allow those thoughts to bring her in the opposite direction of what she really wants for our relationship. And that is a deep emotional connection with each other, even when I'm on the road.
Yeah. And I can say with confidence that the more you do this and the more that you transform, and it's hard work. Yeah. It is really hard work. There are times where you're like, you just feel the pain of it and you're like, I don't want to, I want to sit in this because it feels a little bit better just to validate feelings. And those feelings it's not that you're not validating your feelings, it's that you're validating truth over feelings, that truth becomes bigger than the feelings. Yeah. And the truth is I'm okay. The truth is God is a provider. He's a protector of my heart. I am safe. Yeah. My core needs are met. And it's just coming into alignment with what is true. And now, very rarely when you travel do I feel that those triggers that I did because of the work of transformation that God did in my heart and in my mind. So now I have this testimony, right? Like, because I have a lot of wacky thoughts that I have to, that everybody, we all have like some pretty major faulty ways of thinking that we have to transform.
Yeah.
And now I have a testimony that it's possible.
And doesn't it feel like so much more peaceful and powerful in your own life?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like that feeling of peace.
Yeah.
When I go on the road, because your thinking is dialed.
Mm-hmm.
And again, and I want to kind of turn this around for a second. Tori does know that my heart's with her.
Yeah.
Now let's just assume you're in a relationship where you have experienced negative thoughts towards your spouse, but it is true. Like your spouse's heart might not really be with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can tell that he would rather play golf with his buddies than do the thing you really need him to do at home. Or you can tell that she would rather go out and have drinks with her friends than to be taking care of, you and the kids
mm-hmm.
at night for dinner. And you know that, and it's true,
yeah.
and you're thinking negatively about that. What I would say to that is, at that moment, you've got to have the eternal perspective. You got to remember a good relationship, a good marriage is not between two people, it's between three.
Yeah, so
where
good.
God is the primary partner.
Right.
In that moment, you do have to take those thoughts captive and say, God, I know right now that my spouse does not care about me
right.
as much as I would like them to. I pray that you would turn their heart.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're now taking the situation to God.
Yeah.
And you're like, but in the meantime, I can't let negative thinking toward them overtake my responsibility at home.
Mm-hmm.
My kids still need me.
right.
I've got a job that needs me, or whatever the case may be. It's bringing
so good.
God into the mix. And so that's an encouragement for you on how you can control negative thinking when that negative thinking is actually lining up with the truth that your spouse, their heart isn't really with you.
Yeah, that's so good. I want to read another thing that he says in this chapter about noticing. He said the scientists found that distressed marriage couples were more likely to forgo rewarding their partner's loving behaviors in favor of punishing their spouse for bad behavior.
Wow. Yeah.
Criticizing them, interrupting them, complaining, and turning away from them. This pattern of ignoring the good and punishing the bad fueled discord and created unhappy marriage.
And that's what insecurity looks like.
Yeah.
If either spouse in the relationship acts like that and behaves like that, where
mm-hmm.
you'd rather punish the bad than reward the good,
mm-hmm.
you are an insecure human being.
Yeah.
You have got to get to the bottom of what has made you so insecure.
Yeah.
If you're constantly interrupting your spouse or you constantly have to be right.
Yeah.
And especially, God forbid, you do it in front of other people.
Yeah.
Like that is a bad sign. And then what Tori and I have seen with couples is if couples don't figure that out, if they don't learn how to get past that, then your relationship is going to be nothing more than tyranny by the most selfish partner.
Yeah.
The most selfish partner is always going to get what they want.
Right.
And the least selfish partner, the one who's getting the beat down all the time, is just going to let you get whatever you want. And so long as you're happy, they're happy.
Right.
That's a terrible relationship. And I do want to say this. If you find yourself in that situation, you have to lovingly confront, or at some point you are going to, violently reject.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe not violently, but like in terms of if you don't confront and make sure that you say what needs to be said, how it needs to be said, then at some point you're going to find yourself rejecting your spouse, and you're not even going to know why. You're going to be rejecting your own relationship, even to the detriment of your kids.
Yeah.
And so you have to be able to be in an environment where you can confront. Now, if you're like, well, my spouse could never take it, pray and ask God.
Yeah.
And then you guys might need to get some counseling.
For sure.
Go into a situation. I mean, Tori and I have had so many couples that we've counseled over the last 20 years where the wife would say, I can't say that to my husband. Is there any way that your husband could bring that up to him? And sure enough, I do.
Yeah.
And then he's like, yeah, you know what? You're right. That kind of thing. So it's really good to have a couple that can walk you through and talk to you, and the guy can talk tough to the husband if he needs to. The woman can talk sensitive, to you as the spouse, but don't ever neglect the fact that God is the one who's your partner in your relationship, but then he'll use other people outside of your relationship to help you.
Yeah.
So you're never hopeless.
Right.
You're never hopeless.
So good. And just going back to, the whole concept of rewarding loving behaviors, not only punishing bad behavior. Like God is a rewarder. I'm just going to go back real quick to talking about just rewarding good behavior and not just punishing bad behavior, because I think that is such an important thing to remember as couples, that when your spouse does something good, be a rewarder of that.
Yes.
Right? Like we do it with our kids. God does it with us, and he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. God is a rewarder. It's in his nature, and it should be in our nature too, to be rewarding, be looking for ways to reinforce good behavior.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because some of the best advice Tori and I ever got, and it was the best advice, at least from my perspective, came from an older couple that we heard. They were speaking on stage, and the woman came out and she said, okay, I got to tell all you ladies, you can use sex as a reward for your husband. And, it's kind of a shocking thing. You're like, what?
That's manipulation. That's not,
No, manipulation is, I won't give you sex if you don't do this. Mm-hmm. Reward is, hey, if you can bathe the kids and get them in bed, or vacuum the floor, help me with the dishes, or unload the dishwasher, or be home on time, or whatever, then I can make sure that, we can have some time to be together. They
made the point that a man is very motivated by that. Very. And then, so if you're having a hard time getting your husband motivated to be helpful around the house, to be, kind of partnering with you with things, use that as a reward. Like,
yes.
I can get into that mindset if you can help me relax a little bit by taking off some of this load.
Yes. And listen, you ladies, go up, hug your husband, like just a total spontaneous hug, and go, okay, so here's the deal. The kids have been driving me crazy. I need a couple hours out of the house. Can you take them and make sure that by the time I get home, they're already situated and in bed. And I promise you that we'll have some time together if you can do this for me. And I promise you, your husband, so long as he's in a good place mentally, he's not stressed out at work and doesn't care about that kind of thing, but he'll respond favorably to that, and it'll benefit your relationship.
Yeah. And one more thing before we close this out, I thought this was such a good practice that Dr. Amen talks about in the book. This is a way that he practices noticing what is good more than what is bad at night before he goes to sleep. And I've been trying to do this, and I feel like it has been really, really helpful. And it's helped me to set some intent on this, is when you're falling asleep, go through your day hour by hour and just notice the things that you appreciated in that hour.
Yeah.
And he said, he falls asleep probably by noon. He's an older guy. But for me too, like if you're having a hard time falling asleep, do that and you'll fall asleep.
I'd have a hard time thinking about what I did each hour.
I know it is. Hard. I mean, for me, it's kind of like in clusters.
Yeah,
like
it's just gratitude.
Morning, afternoon, night, but there's a lot to be grateful for, and there's a lot of things to notice. And this really helps you to practice to notice the good.
Yeah.
And one more thing, we talk about this, in creation, when God created.
Yeah, it is good.
Everything, he says, and after he creates everything, he pauses and says, and he saw that it was good. And he noticed that it was good.
That's good.
We've got to follow his example of noticing.
I like that. Notice what you like more than you dislike, and watch what happens to your relationship.
Yes.
I love it.
Okay.
That's great.
And so for a recipe this week for you guys, okay. So you guys know that we're homeschooling Lundy for this year.
Tori said that was generous.
Yes, that was generous. And so one of my goals was to teach her to cook more, like, help me make some meals. And so anyways, one of the things I really wanted to teach her was how to roast a chicken, like a full chicken. I remember when you and I were, we had, I think it was Trey or Allie, one of our friends brought us when we, for the meal after we had her, brought us this like beautiful roasted chicken with carrots and potatoes. It was like all in one pot. And it was one of my favorite meals. It was so cozy and it was so like, it just was comfort food. And, but so I remember like her telling me how to make this, and I just couldn't do it that much, because you have to, like, when you're doing a chicken, they say you have to like clean it out. You have to, in a raw chicken, and you have it in your sink. And I'm just like thinking about all the bacteria and like you're scrubbing the inside, the outside. It always grossed me out.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just learned, this is so exciting, you guys.
Yeah.
That you actually don't have to clean a chicken.
Oh.
That
okay.
Julia Childs.
Oh. Yeah. Julie and Julia.
Yeah, if you guys haven't watched the movie Julie and Julia, it's my favorite movie.
It's such a good movie.
And she, she was a cook back in the 40s, 50s. I don't even know. Anyways, so she was like one of the first women to do a cooking show. I think my grandma used to listen to her.
Yeah.
And she said that you have to, clean your chicken. And I don't know where she learned that from. And it was kind of like started this trend that you have to clean your chicken. Well, recently somebody came out and said, hey guys, that's actually doesn't make sense because when you cook a chicken, it burns off all the bacteria.
Yeah.
You're bringing more bacteria into your kitchen by putting it in your sink and messing with it than
throw it in the oven.
Just throw it in the oven. It's going to kill everything. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Becky, would you look at that chicken?
Look at that chicken. So I taught Lundy how to make a chicken and it turned out pretty good. So the recipe that I used was from Cooking for My Soul. It's a recipe on their website. And it's very much a lot of lemon. And so I didn't love the lemon. We're going to show you how we did it.
I actually bit into the lemon.
So you actually cook the vegetables with cubes of quarters of lemon. I would not do that.
Yeah, because
Jason actually dug into, like, I did beets and parsnips and carrots and potatoes, and
I bit into
and a lemon, and he's like, did you cook a lemon?
Like, I've never tasted a cooked lemon.
I was like, oh, we're supposed to take those out. So anyways, I'll show you how we did it. Maybe you guys want to, it's such an easy meal for, like, Lundy could pretty much do it by herself. And she felt so accomplished. Like, she has this beautiful roasted chicken that she created for our family. And so anyways, it was kind of fun. And I'll share that with you guys. I'm Jason Torrey, Instagram. We'll make a little reel to show you how I do it. Maybe your kids will want to give it a try too.
I like it.
All right.
This was a good one. Notice what you like more than you dislike, or don't. Whichever way you want to go. All right. We'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.